After the successful adoption of the 6.06 trillion naira budget of change, the federal government states it has begun releasing funds to ministries, departments and agencies for the execution of their projects, with an order that the MDAs produce their projects' execution reports monthly. So far, the federal government says a total of 2.5 trillion naira has been released into the system.
Analog nature of the procurement process.
This is the disclosure made by the Minister of Budget and National Planning, Senator Udo Udoma, as he, the Minister of Finance, Kemi Adeosun, and others in the finance sector appear before the Senate Committee on Appropriations.
The Minister of State wants to say something. That with tariff increases,
Senator Udoma discloses that a total of funds released represents 35% of cash backing for implementation of provisions contained in the budget.
We are trying to see what we can do going.
But the Senate Committee on Appropriation is concerned that the implementation of the budget is yet to be impactful, as revealed during its oversight functions.
Releases have been very, very slow, particularly on capital projects. And the overheads, in most cases, is not even up to 30% of what is supposed to be released. We don't know whether this is also because of the inability of government to collect revenue arising from the militancy of the Niger Delta and also the general economic recession. The picture is not so, pleasing. It looks very, very gloomy, to say the least. And I don't know whether you can throw more light on this. We're just coming back from the IG's office, and they told us very clearly that what they have released, what they have received rather, is not even up to 20% of what they are supposed to collect. So we need to throw more light on this.
In the 2016 budget, we have a 2.2 trillion naira budget deficit. And in this budget, you intend to finance this deficit from borrowings locally and foreign. And then I think about 400 billion is coming from the loot, 900 locally and foreign. Now, can you still throw light on how far you've gone with these borrowings? The domestic borrowing, the foreign borrowing, and even what is the status of this loot recovery, whether you've been able to plow this recovered loot into to form part of or to finance this deficit.
So far, 753 billion naira has been released for capital expenditure, while 1.2 trillion naira is for personal costs, according to the Minister of Budget and Planning. He says the federal government is short of funding and has not been able to release 100% funds for overhead.
The system that we are adopting this year is a targeted. Each MDA applies and indicates the reason that particular project is a priority. How does it fit in? How does it help to create jobs? How does it help to create jobs? How does it help us in terms of getting activity in the economy? So we'll look at all the criteria in determining it. The MDA, first of all, looks at the criteria, examines it, and then sends it to us. And so that is the basis of allocation, which is why it is not a pari passu between different MDAs. Since we are short of funding, we cannot and have not been able to release 100% overheads. But overheads generally are on a pari passu basis on overheads. But we've not been able to release 100% overheads. Because in terms of our priority, we start with statutory transfers. So to judiciary, 100%, National Assembly, 100%, and so on. And then the overheads, based on the available resources. We now, allocate. And so far, I think we've only been able to do up to 8 months in terms of overhead. So we're not up to date in terms of overhead. So that explains the shortfall in overheads. There is a shortfall in overheads.
The schedule on overhead breaks down by agency between page
The Minister of
35
Finance,
and I believe
Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, looks to have more explanations to the point raised on the inadequate overhead costs, even as she maintains that the government is recovering looted funds almost on a daily basis, but has been facing legal constraints in recovering looted funds stacked abroad.
We have recovered quite considerable sums, and I think the last publication of figures was done by the Minister of Information. I'll have to update to give you exact figures because indeed money comes in almost on a daily basis into those accounts. However, the majority of the loot, the significant chunks of loot are located in other jurisdictions, and we're still battling with some of those countries. In fairness to the President, he's done an excellent job of prevailing upon them to start to release our money. Whilst we were in Washington, we had very positive meetings around some of the Abacha loot, which is about $300 million, which the Americans have now agreed would be returned to us. The Swiss loot, there's now an agreement on the return of those monies. But that gives you an idea of how long it's taking, because this is Abacha loot. The loot that was taken more recently, much of it is still tied up in legal process. But we're doing absolutely the best we can. We have a lot of cooperation agreements with the various jurisdictions to get this money back. But largely, what we've been recovering is largely loot here in the country, through EFCC, through ICPC, where they're having agreements with people and money is being returned. The foreign money is a little bit more difficult to get, takes a little bit more time, and is a bit more process bound, but we are working on it.
Her comments are corroborated by the Director General of the Budget Office, Mr. Ben Akabwezi.
That MDAs should provide for it within their overheads. However, for health and educational institutions, because of their size and the amount involved, there is a provision in service-wide votes to support, to assist them. But across board, MDAs are expected to accommodate those services in their overhead.
The Finance Minister gives a breakdown of the releases so far to include 753 billion naira for capital votes, 117 billion naira for statutory transfers, 135 billion naira for service-wide votes, 108 billion naira for overheads, while consolidated pensions stand at 142 billion naira and personal costs totaled 1.2 trillion naira. The minister says the government is still awaiting the final works on the loan being sought from China.
The foreign borrowing we had anticipated towards the second and third quarters of the year. The China Exim funding, we're waiting for the finalization of the contract agreements on the rail, so that is on course. Because those are project tied. The budget support which we're applying to the African Development Bank for, we're expecting to complete, we've completed negotiation this month and we're expecting to complete that transaction this coming month. The other Eurobond, we have just finished the procurement process for the advisors. We are waiting for BPP no objection, hopefully getting that within a week or so and going out to the market, close that before the end of the year. Now, the international markets are quite favourable at the moment for borrowing. The rates are low. Many jurisdictions actually have negative interest rates. So there's been quite a lot of anticipation of the Nigerian Eurobond offer, and we're quite confident that we'll be able to raise that money at a fairly good price. It's quite a good time for emerging markets to be borrowing in the international markets. But we continue to emphasize that these borrowings are really for capital projects, and we're expecting that those projects will help us increase our revenues to enable us to pay back. We're being very prudent with our debt strategy, and that's why we really went for the cheapest money first, which was World Bank, ADB, the concessional money, the export credit agencies where possible. And we're only going for the Eurobond, which is the commercial window, when we've exhausted all of the concessional money. Now, in terms
The issue of agencies with high internally generated revenue is also torched, with focus on the fact that they can be self-funding with less dependency on the government's allocation. Ms. Adeosun reveals that some revenue-generating agencies have been inflating their expenses.
Honourable Minister of Finance, yes, we talked about this issue of agencies with Nigeria. In my experience as a member of public accounts, most of the agencies of government could be self-funding through their IGR. And I don't know how government intends to handle this, because most of them, you see them coming up with all kinds of fraudulent policies on allowances approved by their so-called boards, just to absorb the revenue. And I believe that on the basis of this experience, if there is any need to bring down the portion of the retention by agencies, please let us know urgently. And I think it's one avenue that we can actually use to checkmate the agencies. So I don't know what we can throw more lights on that.
I believe that one of the challenges we're facing, particularly in the tertiary and in the smaller institutions, is that their running costs are actually very high. And we need to probably make some decisions around what they use. Some of them have IGR, which they use to supplement their overhead costs. So we actually need more visibility of what they actually have, which is part of what we're trying to do, particularly with the health institutions, so that we can see what they're actually making and what they're using it for. Because what we've discovered, and we've done some audits, the results of which we'll be sharing with you, is that some agencies, despite huge IGR, will refuse to use that IGR to pay for their outsourced services. They say they're waiting for government to release. And we think all money is fungible. If you're making so much on your IGR, why would you not pay expenses that you have yourself incurred? And then even the process of incurring some of these outsourced services, we have found that some agencies have gone, some tertiary institutions have 20 drivers, no car. So the question is, why are you incurring all those? Because government said they will pay, cannot be the basis for which you go and incur expenditure. So the whole budgeting process, I think we need to tighten it up, and that's what we're working on, so that there's more visibility. Because when you can see their whole revenues, I think you'll have a clearer picture. Because when you just look at what government is releasing, in some cases, it's not the full picture.
After a few hours of questioning and explanations, the chairman gives a nod to the level of implementation of the budget going by the minister's defense, but thinks there's still a snag.
With the optimism of raising more than 900 billion from abroad, with the hope of restoring the oil production to 2.2, we can safely conclude that this budget may be implemented almost not 100%, but really to a very, very high level. I want to get a big, but I'm very happy, and I think the committee is happy, that if you go by what you have said, getting everything restored, getting the foreign loan, restoring the production, this one fully cash back, I think you are doing well. I want to, but the only snag is, it's a good commendation. It's a good commendation, but also in that, I want you to do justice to all the agencies. All the agencies. Because if you don't do that, there's no need for you even to recommend them in the budget. Because once you put budget, we put money in them in the budget, they expect to get it. If they don't get it, and you give 100% overhead, capital, then the other one you give 10% or 20%, that's not fair.